Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all. Good evening, good evening, good evening. So, welcome back to the comprehensive news analysis, the Hindu analysis for today. And we have an interesting set of text and context articles which we have to cover along with PIB coverage, as we already know. Now, the topics which we are going to cover, again, there's one US based article today, wherein we are going to talk about the BTA, the bilateral trade agreement which happened between the US and India, but it has not gone anywhere per se. So what is the issue? Second, we'll talk about a rule change which has come through by the RBI in scams. This is important both as a UPSC aspirant but also as a citizen of India because this may affect you later. Then we have two major articles out of the PIB where we'll be talking about the health ministry today and two major initiative taken. One is the concept of you can say digitization. The other one is called as a new scheme, the Samagra Shishu Bal Swasthya Karyakram, SSBSK, and we'll talk about these two. Then we have on the front page itself industrial output. Certain technical changes have been made. We will discuss about them also. Then we'll talk about how petrol diesel sale with normalization in the West Asia in that regard, there has been change here. And last but not the least is the radio tagged white rumped vulture has got electrocuted. We'll talk about what is the significance of that also. So as you can see, it's a good mix of international relations, the concept of GS paper 3, which is economics plus environment based understanding, species in use. Now, before we begin, remember that the triple treat offer, the Shiksha Mahotsav, is going to end tonight, and you have to use the code IAS English to unlock all the three major concepts, which is the 16999 offer plus the double validity understanding plus UPPSC complete course and also a CSE Assure, which is inbuilt into all of this. So it is important that you use this opportunity before it runs past in that regard. Now, with this, let's talk about the first topic. Are we ready? Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good to see you all. Now that you knew the time, you are on time. Yesterday, there was a little bit of, you can say, up, down, people trickling in. Now, good to see you all here. Okay, great, perfect. Now, we all know that there was a major concept which came up. India has actually done a FTA with the EU also. And there was also the concept of an FTA or a BTA as it is called with the US. Now the question is, what is the timeline of this BTA? That is the first thing. Second thing is, why don't we hear about this BTA now? And what are the roadblocks it has hit? See, as it is, I think you are smart enough to understand that whatever Trump does, you can't really trust him, first thing. Second thing is, he's not consistent. So today he may say something, tomorrow he may say something totally different. So you really don't know about that. And at the same point of time, a lot of the tariff wars which he started, everything else around it, you will realize it that the US as of right now is a finicky power. It is an erratic power. It is a power which basically really cannot be trusted and is not consistent, makes a lot of different moves, randomly entered the West Asian sector, randomly just went into the Iranian war, had no goals per se. The Israeli pressure was there. Now they have there was no tariff on the Strait of Hormuz. Now they're giving 300 billion back to the Iranians for redevelopment. They are also allowing them to charge something as transit in the Strait of Hormuz. They are, as of right now, one of the biggest mess in the world. And India is also caught up in this mess because the BTA has now got, you can say, stuck in multiple, you can say, legal battles within the US Senate, US Supreme Court, and what is called as US Trade Representative Law and a certain section within the act itself. We'll come to that. Now, let's do one thing. Let's first establish what is the timeline of this BTA. Because this article is by TCS Sharad Raghavan, very, very celebrated personality when it comes to economic history and even economic news, very well summarized in that regard. So we know that in February of 2025, the US and India announced a BTA. Did not go through. There was a lot of delays. Finally, in February of 2026, an interim trade deal was talked about, and it was said that it will become operational by the last month itself. But it has not happened. Now, the question is, if that is the case, then what are the roadblocks which are there? Now, based on this creative, you have to understand what is actually happening. The BTA was announced in February of 2025. The idea was that we will go for a free trade agreement. By September, November of 2025, it will come into understanding. That is the whole point, Anushka. That is the whole point of this article. Very good question. So, September, November 2025, it should have become operational. Then randomly in 2025 April, Trump went on a rampage. That rampage, if you remember, is called as the Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs. He said, if there is any country which is charging us high tariff, we will reciprocate it. This is the day America is going to be liberated, and close to 25% to 30% tariff was put on most of the Asian nations. And therefore, this was a place where India realized that these negotiations need to be streamlined, because you never know with Trump. For 90 days, he created pure chaos in the world, as we know, the pure tariff war, which was there. Now, then what he did was, after 90 days, he took back the reciprocal tariffs. Then one major roadblock which emerged around April and July of 2025 was, India always wants to protect two things: dairy sector and agriculture. And dairy sector, agriculture, market access into our agriculture, and Russian oil now became a certain point of contention, that India is buying Russian oil. Should it be allowed to trade with America with the same terms itself? There was a punitive action which was coming through. And that punitive action was put in late July 2025, when 25% tariff was imposed on India for buying Russian oil. This was larger, in large part, a part of the reciprocal tariffs itself, but there was a Russian oil angle. So if you look at it, by mid of July, the BTA with reciprocal tariffs and with the understanding of what India was seen as a problematic power because it was funding the Russian war, the major retaliation, or you can say the biggest punitive action which was taken against India, was in early 2025, where the second round of tariff acceleration came through, where 50% more, or rather 25 plus 25, additional 25% tariff was put onto India for buying Russian oil. So you can see that in July we had 25%, now August we have 50%, 25% increase for buying Russian oil. Then between August and September of 2025, these talks went into limbo, a period of, you can say, thaw, which is nobody was talking to no one. Obviously, with 50% tariff, it would never make sense. Then in October of 2025, India realized that the BTA is very important because of everything which has happened before this point. And in February of 2026, celebrated like anything, for at least 6 days, we covered this in CNA itself, the interim arrangement under which 18% tariff would be applied by the US on India, and at the same point of time, committed access to the markets, and a free trade agreement was signed. However, this should have been operational by May of 2026, but it hasn't. Now, the reason why I am discussing this with you is because I am not presuming that you know the story. I am giving you the background here because I want you to understand the larger ebb and flow. This is something which has been going on for the past 2 years, from announcement to random tariff wars to punitive action over Russian oil, to second punitive action over Russian oil, to then trying to make it operational. Now there's no Russian oil angle. It is totally something else. And that is where this article comes through, that why did this February of 2026 BTA announcement not go operational? Do we understand the overall, you can say, timeline here? Do we understand the overall timeline here? How it has progressed, how it has been progressing? Do we understand this? Yes? As US administration is not reaching definite point, there is vagueness, Anushka, but there are much bigger legal issues now, which we'll talk about. There are three major legal issues which have come through, and therefore we have to discuss them. So we will obviously, as we do always, we will summarize all of this again. But remember, saga starts in February 2025, ends in 2026, but again is not getting operational. Now, the first reason why most of the tariffs or these tariffs regulations did not go through was because of the US Supreme Court. When the Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs were applied under the rule called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of the US, the American Supreme Court said that this was not allowed within this act. Similarly, when he removed these tariffs and brought it down to 10%, where he basically removed the reciprocal tariff and brought it down to 10% under the Trade Act of 1974, again, this was seen as an illegal act within this act itself. And as of right now, the question mark with regards to is it 18%, 10%, 50%, 25%, is sub judice in America. At the same point of time, it has been deemed illegal by the US court itself. So the judiciary in the US intervened and said that whatever actions you've done are illegal under this act, and in a way, it was withdrawn. There were two reasons, Lux, for that. First is that the reciprocal tariffs were just a fear-mongering tactic, a tariff war tactic. There was never going to be anything substantial which was going to be done. That is why 3 months he did it, then he removed it. But what is interesting is the regime he put into place, the regime which he removed and put another into place, the two regimes, which is reciprocal tariff and the world beyond that, both were challenged in the US Supreme Court, and he had to take it back because the US Supreme Court said both these actions are illegal under the Trade Act of 1974 of the US itself. So what does this entail? This entails that this part was all illegal. What happened between February to July of 2025 was all illegal according to the US Senate, according to the US Supreme Court in that regard. So this was established first. Now, the major roadblock which is not allowing the February of 2026 BTA to go operational is, or rather are, two major investigations which are happening in the US as of right now, and there has been punitive action under it also. This is important for you. The US Trade Representative under Section 301 of the Trade Act investigated a whole plethora of countries, 16 here, 60 here, including India, for two things. And please do understand one thing, when you will see the provisions of these two investigations, you will realize it is pure American hypocrisy and it is pure American concept of distorting the market, and it is Western economic entitlement. How? See, the first investigation said that 16 economies, including India, was to see whether these economies were using excessive or excess manufacturing capacity to export to the US in a manner that was hurting American businesses. We basically call this concept as dumping. In India, there's also called CVD, which is called countervailing duties, which is for the concept of anti-dumping duties, they're called. Meaning, no country should be dumping its very cheap products into the market so that it in turn leads to distortion of the market itself. So, first investigation was about, is India dumping very cheap products into India, into America due to the excess manufacturing capacity. Now, prima facie, this is just randomly saying that we are a manufacturing nation, we are a developing nation. Excess manufacturing capacity is a random word. And it was seen that India was doing it. But what is more serious and is pure American propaganda is the second provision or the second investigation. Under the second investigation, whether these countries, including India, had taken sufficient steps to prohibit the import of goods produced with forced labor, and how the failure to eradicate these practices impacts US workers and businesses. Under the forced labor investigation, the US government in early June proposed to levy a 12.5% tax on imports from 54 countries, including India, as they had failed to impose and efficiently enforce prohibitions on import of goods produced using forced labor. Now, this is pure what is called as American propaganda. What are they talking about? Forced labor. They don't define what is forced labor. Yes, in India, there is still some form of bonded labor, forced labor, begar, which happens. But this begar is not used to export products into America. Therefore, just because they wanted to derail the BTA, what they have done is they have come up with this concept to put us under a group of nations which actually are called as coercive labor nations, or labor where there is, or there is labor market where there is forced labor. Human rights of labor has been talked about now. So, congratulations on that. The simple point here is that these two investigations are purely based on the concept of what is called as American entitlement and a conscious effort by the US to now derail the whole practice itself. Derail the whole practice itself. So, what do you do with all this information? There is a lot of information given in this article. We now have to contextualize it. See, February of 2025, there was a certain negotiation on BTS. This was negated because of the reciprocal liberation day tariff. Then in July and August of 2025, India was hit with first 25% and then 50% tariff because of the Russian oil issue. From there, we were able to recover, and by February of 2026, we were able to announce a BT agreement under which 18% tariff was proposed. But now this has got derailed because of three major actors. This got derailed because of three major actors. First is the US Supreme Court. Supreme Court has argued that Trump does not have the authority to change different, you can say, tariffs the way he is doing it because of the fact that he is misusing the provisions of the Trade Act. Then the first investigation and the second investigation. The first investigation says that we are using excess manufacturing capacity to distort the American market. This is a protectionist measure basically anti-dumping. And the second is even more interesting. It says that though it says that India does not use forced labor, but it says India has failed to eradicate and enforce laws against forced labor. That is why India will be entitled for 12.5% tariff if we take this 18% into consideration itself. Arbitrary sanctions based on, yes, 100% Manisha, 100%. These two are arbitrary actions. Just to make sure that Trump, whatever he has done, maybe in political sensationalization and understanding, he went into the BTA. But now they need reasons to come out of the BTA. And now they have found, see, if America wants, it can actually take out India off the list of both these investigations. But it is suiting them right now. Because the way in which the BTA was signed and the terms on which it was signed, maybe it is unfavorable for the US. That realization came to them later or at a later stage itself. So if you actually look at it, this is the basic timeline. And if somebody asks you why the BTA has not become operational today, the reason for that is very simple. The reason for that is because of the two investigations which are going. Are we clear? I would like to give you a question. Are we clear about this? Simple. It's not a very difficult article to decode, but has a lot of information in it. Right, sir? Okay, beautiful. So, question would be, the US India BTA has run into unexpected roadblocks based on American high-handedness. Discuss. 150. You can use the word high-handedness, entitlement, whatever you want. The simple point is, this roadblocks you cannot write if you don't know this article. Right? Isn't there a necessity to reconsider certain terms in the international realms? See, Manisha, it's a good question which you're asking. But the problem with that question is, see, the world order is controlled, as much as we like it or don't like it, is controlled by American politics and American diplomacy. Yes, there is multipolarity which is emerging. China is emerging as an important power. Russia has always been an important power. But the problem is, all institutions revolve around the US. Now, in order to reconsider diplomatic international realms and regimes in that regard, firstly, you can say developing nations, BRICS nations, other than China at least, and Russia, BRICS nations, specifically India, Brazil, need a seat in the UN Security Council, which is never going to happen as it is. Second thing is that permanent seat is blocked by the same nations which are talking about India as being the future. At the same point of time, America does not want the world power shift to happen. And what they're doing in Venezuela, what they have done in Venezuela, and what they did in West Asia as of right now, and the way they have responded to the things, we discussed the way they hit 3 different ships which were neutral ships. They control everything. They control the rhetoric also, they control the narrative also, they also control the institutions also. And therefore, see, WTO has become more or less useless because of India, because of Russia, because of American high-handedness only. UN is a toothless dog, has no real power today. Everything is happening, anything is happening. UN has nothing, no role per se in that regard. But sadly, as you say, the reality is that the reconsideration of the global order is based on US's consent to do it only. That is the problem. So therefore, in this BTA, we really can't trust the US. US has never been a trustworthy power, but it has become even more inconsistent. Maybe under Clinton, Obama, there was some form of sanity there. If NATO cannot trust Trump, how can we? And when we were talking about all these BTAs in February and March, the exact line which I said on the same platform was, let's see what happens, because it is very easy for Trump to derail this whole process and create n number of impediments in creating this concept further. So that is what is happening, right? Perfect. Now, we all understand this. You all also understand reciprocal Liberation Day tariffs. India got a tariff hit and thereafter BTA. Now, three things are stopping the BTA to come into force. Now, coming back to India and something which is closer to you and me, is RBI changing rules for scam compensation? Now, here you have to understand there are two types of scams which can happen to you, with you, right? Okay. Argument is neighborhood first policy to have stronghold in other regions. See, Manisha, good, you can say tangent which you want to go into, but neighborhood first, more or less we've abandoned because SARC is dead, Pakistan is not trustworthy, Nepal is too volatile, Bangladesh is pro-Pakistan as of right now, and in a way, we cannot trust our neighbors other than Bhutan, but BBIN is also dead because of Bhutan itself. So, the US has played a very key role in making sure that Bangladesh goes anti-India. So, till the US has all the, you can say, leashes, it will not let even our neighborhood first policy to go ahead and actually make any sense per se. America has been and will be and always will be arming Pakistan against India. It has been doing it for, you can say, decades. It will do it further. And similarly, Pakistan will further arm Bangladesh for against India itself. Nepal, there is again an anti-India sentiment. So you can basically believe that when it comes to geopolitics, a lot of good was done in the first term of the NDA. All of that is now going reverse, but separate issue altogether. Now, there are two types of scams. I hope, Manisha, you get my point. There are two types of scams which can happen to you. The first is what is called as a OTP scam. So, previously, maybe 2 to 3 years back, what used to happen was, your money used to be debited from your account, but you never shared an OTP. No, Manisha, no issues whatsoever. So, you never shared an OTP, but money got debited. This is called OTP mule account scam, or they used to create fake phone numbers or used to clone your phone. Now, because the government of India became more and more, you can say, liable, and it became conscious, the RBI equally became conscious, the banks became conscious of the OTP scam. So the OTP scams have reduced, wherein the bank systems have become two-factor authentication, multiple layers have been created so that this cannot be done. But then the second type of scam which emerged was based on social engineering, which is called digital arrest, or that we found some form of drugs, you pay off to a certain person. This was called coercive bank scams. Coercive bank scams means that you are in a position that you really can't do anything but to give the details of your bank account to the scamster, because you have been in a way become stuck with that person through coercive actions. Now, the recent changes which the RBI has brought in the 2017 circular, which used to exist, a draft notification had come in March, and now this is going to be enforced, which is called limited liability of customers in unauthorized electronic banking transactions. In this, there has been an amendment. Now, these amendments have been made with multiple concepts in mind and based on the idea that, see, previously there was a certain scam which was based on OTP and passcodes. Since the RBI became more and more conscious of it, zero clicks hacks have become very rare. But at the same point of time, now this is very important for you for the examination, EBTs has become very, very common. Now, please remember this word EBTs. EBTs means fraudulent economic banking transaction, and the way it has been defined is transactions which are executed by a third party using the credentials obtained from the customer through fraudulent means or executed by the customer by granting approval under coercion, duress from the third party. This is basically the digital arrest concept. Or an EBT which is not authorized by the customer and includes an EBT occurring on account of negligence by a bank or third party breach. So now what RBI wants to target is EBT. Now EBT is defined in three ways. First is where the customer was under duress or was under coercion. At the same point of time, there was negligence by the bank or there was negligence by the third party. Now, let's take an example of each. You were put under digital arrest. Under digital arrest, you had to share your bank account details. That falls under this definition. Now, what happens is there's a server breach in the bank itself. Then this falls under this concept. Now, what happened is you gave your bank account details to CRED. CRED server was breached. So, third party breach was there. So, it falls under this concept. So, what RBI has done is it has expanded the, you can say, role of the banks at the same point of time, the definition of scams, which is a good thing, which is actually a good thing. Now, based on this, what are the new rules and regulations which have come through? But do we understand EBT? Do we understand what is EBTs? Do we understand this? Please, you have to tell me, because this is the concept on which we further move ahead. EBT is the new concept defined by social engineering scams, third party breaches or bank scams. Yes, great. Now, the new rules say the following. If there is customer negligence, then you are not liable for compensation. And this you must have seen if you are on a call and you scan a QR code on Paytm or on PhonePe or on Google Pay. And if you try to pay money, there's a pop-up which comes. What does that pop-up say? That you are on call. This may be a fraudulent transaction. This may be a scam. Do you want to proceed further? That is where if you get that pop-up, you ignore it and then do that transaction, then UPI based fraudulent transactions will not be compensated for. You will not be liable for compensation because the warning signals were ignored by you. This is a new concept. First. Second, if you were a subject of any form of, you can say, fraudulent transaction, any form of transaction which was a scam, previously used to get 3 days to report it to the bank and RBI. Now that has been increased to 5 days. So for 5 calendar days, if you tell the bank and RBI that you have gone through a certain form of scam, you will be compensated for. Good concept. Further, if you have told the RBI and the bank that you have been a subject to this, then there's no liability on you. It is the problem of the bank and RBI to figure out how they give you the money back. However, bank can waive this concept or can define negligence according to their discretion as per their understanding. For example, you were actively giving out your UPI ID to people and then a scam happens. Then you may not be liable for compensation because this would be considered negligence. But one of the biggest concepts is if your phone number and email ID with the bank is old and you have not done eKYC and then something happens to you, then again you are not considered for compensation. Saying that we were never going to reach you, we would never have been able to send you the fraudulent alerts. Therefore, this is negligence on your part. So you can see, whilst they have expanded our rights, they have also reconsidered what is negligence. If you are actively becoming, you can say, a member or a privy to all of these issues, you are being extremely negligent and you are being extremely dumb in these concepts, then the bank cannot help you. Now comes the compensation part. For losses up to 50,000, you are liable for once in your lifetime a compensation of 85% amount, which would be up to 25,000. Meaning from 29,000 to 50,000, the maximum compensation which you will get is 25,000. If it is less than 25,000, you will get 85% of that amount. But what is even more interesting is, if this fraud is above 50,000, this framework is silent on it. This is a little bit concerning because 50,000 is not a very big amount. So, fraudulent transactions which are above 50,000 are not liable under this concept itself. How will the banks compensate you? 3/4 will be borne by the RBI and rest will be taken by the customer and beneficiary, and you can call on the customer helpline 1930. Now, this is very interesting. Now, obviously, a lot of information. Can I summarize this for you in one slide? Or rather, I've done that for you already. Can we look at that one slide where we have everything together? Can we do that? Yes, sir. Great. See, these are the major changes which have come through. First is EBTs. EBTs definition. Second is coverage of certain scams beyond OTPs. Now it includes digital arrests. You get 5 calendar days. There's an increase in the time in which you can do anything. Further, there's no liability if you do it within the 5 days itself. But the bank can remove your negligence clause if they find you to be negligent. That includes not updating your contact details. Compensation is for up to 50,000, 85% till 25,000, 29,000. Above 29,000, it would be flat rate 25,000. Compensation is set 3/4 by the RBI. Well, helpline number is this, but above 50,000, it is beyond this concept itself. I hope when you will get this PPT, you will just, if you want to take a screenshot, you can take a screenshot also. Totally your call. But you will get this also. So, very simply, this is the gist of this article. This is the gist of this article. Basically, these are all the changes which the regulations have brought. Now, let's discuss a question on this. With changing nature of digital scams, RBI's recent changes tries to keep up with the changing landscape of scams. Explain. 150 words. Again, obviously, you can't answer this question if you don't know what we've discussed in this class itself. If you don't know this, if you don't know what is EBTs, you will never be able to answer this question. EBTs are important. You have to understand this. Now, before we move on to the PIB based articles, let's try to understand what have we done till this point. We have understood India-US BTS and the recent Supreme Court judgment in the US. First investigation, excess manufacturing. Second investigation, forced labor. Along with that, what have we understood? We have understood what is EBTs. At the same point of time, we have also understood the 5-day window which has been created. Also the 50,000 scam limit along with 25,000, you can say flat compensation after 29,000. If less than that, 85% is compensated. Are we clear about this? Do I have everybody's consent that yes sir, we understand all of this? Now we can move ahead to the smaller articles, easier articles, more prelims oriented than mains orientation. Yes, very good, perfect. Now, the first one is a scheme which was mentioned in the Ministry of Family Health and Family Welfare PIB press releases. The Union Minister has recently launched Samagra Shishu Bal Swasthya Karyakram SSBSK at a certain meeting. Now, you need to know the basic objectives, concepts which are embedded inside it. I hope that you realize one thing, that you can do anything and everything. You will not remember this article straight. That is not possible. That makes no sense also. So, see, the SSBSK, which is Samagra Shishu Bal Swasthya Karyakram, what it does is it subsumes two programs inside it: home-based newborn care and home-based care for young children. These two have been subsumed into what is called as Samagra Shishu Bal Swasthya Karyakram, and now it is a seamless concept wherein when a child is born in an institutional setup till 36 months of age, there will be a continued home and community based care for that child. So basically what is called as the postnatal care, which is once you are born till 36 months. Previously, the government of India used to take care for antenatal care, which is before birth for the mother and the child. But now from 0 to 36 months of age, there will be a continued survey of the health of the child. The logic behind that is because the first 28 days to the next 3 years is optimal for the development of the child, of the development of the brain of the child survival, nutrition, health, growth, all are important. So this is basically the basic objective and concept. Now, the second thing which comes into consideration is features. Now, features, obviously, you can't learn each one of them. I'll give you the most important ones, which is they identify newborns according to the concept of at risk, and when they are at risk because of low birth weight, prematurity, or you can say delayed initiation of breastfeeding, discharge from the newborn care units itself, malnutrition or illness. Now there will be additional follow-up. Up to 9 home visits during the first 42 days will happen of these at-risk children by the what we call as primary healthcare officers, which is the concept of the ASHAs, accredited social health activists, and the Anganwadi workers. They will visit. So this risk-based approach, meaning if a child is extremely healthy, they will be monitored occasionally. But if the child is at risk, there will be at least 9 visits in the first 42 days to make sure that the health of the child is better. Very good move, very good initiative because it gives you an approach which is more holistic. A holistic approach, understanding that the child has to be taken care of before birth also and after birth also. Easy to understand, nothing out of the box. So SSBSK is based on the idea of antenatal care, what is called as postnatal care, and the based on the idea of how we have to create a risk-based approach. Nothing out of the box, simple, straightforward. Then the second thing which we find in the PIB under the press releases of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is a whole set of digital initiatives which have been launched. Now, the digital initiatives, as we call it, there is a whole list. What I've done again for you is I've created a creative for you so that you can just see it in one glance as a unified understanding itself. So he has basically based on the National Health Authority, the National Resource Center for EHR standards, the NIC, and all of them have come together to create a whole plethora of different what is called as digital platforms for better coverage, transparency and accountability. Now, what are these? You have Aarogya Setu 2.0, Ayushman Bharat or Ayushman app, Ayushman Sathi WhatsApp chatbot, National Health Claims Exchange, Insurance Plan FHIR Objective Creator, e-Shushruth Clinic, the Unified Health Interface, Drug Registry, Common LOINSE codes for India, Bharat Terminology Services, Bharat Health Terminology Services. Now, obviously, you can't learn all of this. Not possible. Not possible. Learning each of them is very difficult. But what you can do is you can use these 10 as examples on digitization of health and basically health initiatives. Whatever you can remember, you remember that. Don't go overboard and stress yourself in learning each one of them. But there are close to 90 crore ABHA accounts created, 100 crore health records which have been taken. AI-based healthcare is coming in Sahi and Bodhi launched, which has been recently done. Center-state collaboration and building a healthier and digitally empowered Viksit Bharat is the idea. I have previously made it very clear, following the PIB and its articles is difficult. This is an example of that. I don't know what you do with this information other than giving some of them as examples. But if you are going to learn this rote learning of this, I can bet on it 200%. You will not remember it after a certain point. Given. No doubt whatsoever. Use these as examples in the examination. Not more than that. Don't try to rote learn this. Now, moving on from our PIB articles, we have a positive development, which is industrial output has hit a 5-month high of 5.1%. But there is some magic which the government of India has also done in the background. Now, if you don't understand these concepts, on 1st of July, as you know, from tomorrow itself, Shamsa is going to start microeconomics. So you can join him under Elevate batch also. Now, based on the growth, we have gone from 4.1% to 5.1%, 5-month high after negative growth. But the reason for that is these two. The government has recently revised the index of industrial production series base year to 2022-23. At the same point of time, they have also replaced the value-based outputs from wholesale price index to producer price index. From taking wholesale prices to producers prices, they have in a way basically changed the mechanics of how IIP is actually taken into consideration. Can you say from where to get this PIB time to time? PIB press releases on a day-to-day basis. You join us every day and we will give you PIB coverage, whatever is relevant for UPSC. Over and above that, from June 1st, 2026, the WPI based series will not be taken into consideration, but the PPI based series will be taken into consideration. And this may explain this 5.1 concept. Why? Because 5.1 has been taken into consideration. Very good, Anushka. Interesting. There will be an article for this tomorrow for sure. And there is a change in base here. Please note this point that now PPI will be taken into consideration and the IIP series base year has been changed to 22-23. 22-23. Remember, these two are the main points here. Now, if you go to each and every sector, manufacturing showed, you can say, is less than year on year from 6.1% to 5.5%, but is higher than last year. Electricity and gas is, you can say, 2-year high, driven most by delayed monsoon and higher temperatures. Capital goods strong, consumer goods strong. Mining and quarrying has seen 5th consecutive month of contraction. 5th consecutive month of contraction. That is the whole point. You can do that. You can do that, Manisha, because Manisha, this data as it is not useful after a point. Meaning, if you don't know where do you write it is the question. Yes, having a more, you can say, economic survey is a better source of data released in February of every year for 2027. It will be February 2027. This is a more reliable source, more concise source than maybe following PIB or a article like this. But because it's the front page news itself, it becomes important. But remember that this type of data keeps on changing. Month on month is something which makes no sense for you as an aspirant generally. So what is the expectation is that you remember the larger ebb and flow, obviously. Now, moving on, there are two things which you should know. The petrol and diesel, what we call as limits which were put in for industrial production and the 200 liter limit which was there for personal consumption, that has been removed, which is in a way an indication of the fact that things have become better and will become better if West Asia remains the way it is. A forced, you can say, peace which has come through is now reflecting in consumer goods also. Now, last but not the least, an important article for us, which is a species was in the news. So this becomes important from the perspective of environment. Now, the story behind it is that a white-rumped vulture recently got electrocuted in Tamil Nadu. But what is more interesting is the story behind it. The story behind it is that this vulture was released earlier this year in the Mudumalai Tiger Reserve in the Nilgiri district of Tamil Nadu. Why was it radio tagged? Because it was a vulture which had been basically picked up from the wild, rehabilitated because of its illnesses, and thereafter, the idea was to treat it and then release it into the wild. In that case, this white-rumped vulture actually became a case study in how certain, you can say, species which can be protected, rehabilitated, how do they get acclimatized with the region and with the wild later? How does it happen? They were trying to study that. Unfortunately, it proved very difficult to acclimatize this vulture within the control space itself. And there was a chance that when it would be released, it would not survive. And the death of this vulture has signaled the end of the first attempt to reintroduce a captively bred bird of the species into landscape. And therefore, this may affect future plans in this regard. So therefore, what this proves is that a captively born bird may not be able to understand the wild well, and therefore it has got electrocuted on the high tension wires near Mudumalai Tiger Reserve itself. Therefore, a setback in the larger plans to rehabilitate different forms of species in different, you can say, from in situ we have went to become to ex situ, but now in ex situ, when they have been pushing them into in situ, there is less acclimatization. They're finding it difficult. So I hope that this article also gives you enough understanding and context. Now, before we end this discussion, let's survey what we had set out to do. The first discussion which we wanted to have was the BTA one. Now, BTA, we understand there are three impediments, which is the Supreme Court, the issues related to how there is now a forced labor clause, and at the same point in time, excessive manufacturing clause, which can be used. This is now clear. Second, RBI has brought in a whole plethora of changes, as which you can see here, which is based on the concept of increasing the coverage, EBTs, and the new concept of negligence which has been defined. Thereafter, we also try to understand what is the new Samagra Shishu Bal Swasthya Karyakram, which is based on a risk-based approach. Then we try to understand how there is a whole set of new digital initiatives which have been introduced. Then industrial output at 5-year high. Sale of petrol and diesel curbs have been lifted by the government, and how white-rumped vulture got electrocuted in Tamil Nadu. So, thank you. I hope all of this makes sense. If you have been looking for any form of guided program, this may be the time to use this offer. Tonight, this offer is going to end. CSE Assure 16999 triple treat UPPSC along with that double validity. I hope that you will use this opportunity to join our family. And remember one thing, that when it comes to current affairs survey, don't try to follow everything on a daily basis at a micro level. Try to understand the larger ebb and flow and use a monthly magazine to also consolidate everything in the best way possible. We are resolving the PDF issue. I will share the link where these PDFs are available in the comments where you are making that where is the PDF. Don't worry about that. Okay. All the best, Manisha. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.